I still remember exactly where I was standing when my entire world collapsed into a pile of lies and broken promises. It was February 12th, 2 days before Valentine's Day, and I was holding a velvet ring box in one hand and my phone in the other, staring at a photograph that would change everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the woman I had planned to spend the rest of my life with. My name is Ryan Mitchell, and this is the story of how I discovered my girlfriend of 3 years was living a double life, how I pieced together the truth she tried so desperately to hide, and how I made certain that every single lie she told came back to destroy the perfect facade she had built at my expense. I need to take you back to the beginning so you understand just how deep this betrayal cut me. I met Vanessa Cole at a friend's birthday party 4 years ago. She walked in wearing a red dress that made everyone in the room turn their heads, but what caught my attention was her laugh. It was genuine, warm, infectious. We started talking near the drink table and didn't stop for 3 hours. By the end of the night, I had her number saved in my phone and a feeling in my chest that I had never experienced before. I was 24 years old and completely, utterly, hopelessly falling for a stranger. Our first year together was something out of a movie. We did everything together. Weekend road trips to small towns neither of us had ever visited. Late-night conversations about our dreams and fears and the futures we wanted to build. She told me about her childhood, about growing up with a single mother who worked 2 jobs, about her younger sister Jenna, who she was incredibly protective of, about her determination to become successful enough that she would never have to struggle the way her family had. I admired her ambition. I fell in love with her vulnerability. I believed every word she said because why would the woman I loved lie to me about something so fundamental as who she was? By our second anniversary, we had moved in together. A nice apartment in downtown Austin, Texas. 2 bedrooms, a balcony with a view of the city skyline, and enough space for both of us to have our own offices. I worked as a software developer for a tech startup, and she had climbed her way up to a senior marketing position at a real estate development firm. We were both doing well professionally, and personally, I thought we were stronger than ever. We talked about marriage, not in abstract terms, but in specific details. When, where, how many guests. She said she wanted a spring wedding. She said she wanted me to propose somewhere meaningful. She said she loved me more than she had ever loved anyone. I believed her. God, I believed her completely. The first crack in my perfect picture appeared about 8 months before that February day. Vanessa started working late more often. At first, it was once or twice a week, and she always had a reasonable explanation. A big client presentation, a project deadline, a networking event that ran long. I trusted her, so I never questioned it. I would make dinner and save her a plate. I would text her goodnight when she said she was staying at the office. I would fall asleep alone and wake up to find her beside me, smelling faintly of perfume I didn't recognize. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere. But love makes you blind in ways you don't realize until the blindfold is ripped off. My best friend Marcus was the first person to voice what I refused to see. We had known each other since we were 12 years old, growing up on the same block in Houston before I moved to Austin for work. Marcus had followed me here a few years later to open his own restaurant, a small but successful soul food place that had become a neighborhood favorite. He knew me better than anyone, and he knew when something was off. We were having beers at his restaurant one night in late January when he brought it up. Vanessa had canceled our dinner plans at the last minute, citing an emergency work meeting, and I had texted Marcus to see if he was free. He listened to me make excuses for her for about 10 minutes before he set down his glass and looked me dead in the eyes. "Ryan, I'm only going to say this once because you're my brother and I love you. Something ain't right with that woman. The late nights, the canceled plans, the way she's always on her phone but never tells you who she's texting. I've seen this before. You need to open your eyes." I got defensive. Of course I did. No one wants to hear that the person they love might be deceiving them. I told Marcus he was wrong, that Vanessa was just stressed about work, that their company was going through a major expansion, and she was carrying a lot of responsibility. He held up his hands in surrender and said he hoped he was wrong too. But the seed had been planted, and no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it started to grow. I began paying closer attention. Not spying, not at first, but just being more aware. I noticed that Vanessa would angle her phone away from me when she texted. I noticed that she had started password protecting her laptop, something she had never done before. I noticed that she would sometimes come home from these late nights with her makeup slightly smudged, her hair not quite as perfect as it had been when she left in the morning. Small things, easy to explain away individually, but together they formed a pattern that I could no longer ignore. February came, and with it, my plans for the most important Valentine's Day of my life. I had been planning this for months. The perfect proposal. I had picked out a ring, a stunning princess-cut diamond that had cost me 3 months of savings. I had made reservations at the nicest restaurant in the city, the same place where we had our first official date. I had written a speech, practiced it in the mirror, imagined her face when she said yes. I was so certain she would say yes. 2 days before Valentine's Day, I left work early to pick up the ring from the jeweler. I was walking on air, imagining how perfect everything was going to be. When I got home, Vanessa wasn't there, which wasn't unusual. She had told me that morning she would be working late again. I decided to use the time to hide the ring and make sure everything was in place for our big night. That's when I found her iPad on the couch. She usually kept it in her bag, but she must have forgotten it that morning. The screen was locked, but a notification popped up while I was holding it. A text message from someone named Derek. The preview showed only a few words, but those few words changed everything. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. My hands started shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe Derek was a work colleague talking about a successful presentation. Maybe it was some kind of inside joke I didn't understand. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent explanation. But I knew. Deep in my gut, in that place where the truth lives even when we don't want to see it, I knew. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at that notification until the screen went dark. The ring box in my pocket suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The future I had imagined, the wedding, the house, the kids, the growing old together, all of it was crumbling around me while I stood frozen in our living room, unable to move, unable to think, unable to breathe. When the initial shock passed, a cold clarity took its place. I needed to know the truth. Not suspicions, not assumptions, but actual proof of what Vanessa had been doing behind my back. I thought about confronting her immediately, but something stopped me. If I accused her without evidence, she would deny it. She would gaslight me, make me feel crazy, convince me that I was overreacting. I had seen it happen to other people. I wasn't going to let it happen to me. That night, when Vanessa came home at 10:30 with her usual excuse about work running late, I played the role of the oblivious boyfriend perfectly. I smiled. I asked about her day. I made her a cup of tea before bed. She fell asleep with her head on my chest, and I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, planning my next move. Over the following days, I became a detective in my own relationship. I started paying attention to every detail, every inconsistency, every moment when Vanessa's story didn't quite add up. I discovered that the name Derek appeared in her phone contacts, but she had never mentioned anyone named Derek to me. I found receipts in her coat pockets for restaurants and bars that she had never told me about. I noticed that her location on the Find My app, which we had set up years ago for safety reasons, would sometimes show her in neighborhoods on the other side of the city when she claimed to be at the office. But I needed more than circumstantial evidence. I needed proof I could see with my own eyes. The opportunity came on a Thursday night, 1 week after I had seen that devastating text message. Vanessa told me she would be attending a client dinner that evening and wouldn't be home until late. She was extra affectionate that morning, kissing me goodbye, telling me she loved me, promising to make it up to me over the weekend. I nodded and smiled and said all the right things while my insides twisted with a mixture of dread and determination. That evening, I left work early and parked down the street from the address where Vanessa's location showed her to be. It wasn't a restaurant. It was a residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Austin, filled with expensive modern homes. I watched from my car as the sun set, my heart racing, praying that I was wrong, that there was some explanation I hadn't considered. At 7:45, I saw her car pull into the driveway of a sleek gray house with large windows and a two-car garage. Vanessa got out, looking more beautiful than she had that morning, wearing a dress I had never seen before. She walked to the front door, but before she could knock, it opened, and a man stepped out to greet her. He was tall, well-built, with slicked-back hair and a smile that looked like it had been practiced in front of a mirror. He was wearing an expensive shirt with the top buttons undone, and even from 50 feet away, I could see the way he looked at her, like she belonged to him, like she had always belonged to him. They embraced, not a friendly hug, but an embrace. His hands lingered on her waist. She tilted her head up toward him, and then they kissed. A long, slow kiss that left no room for interpretation or denial. I sat in my car and watched my entire future disappear into that kiss. What I felt in that moment was beyond anything I can describe. Anger, yes. Devastation, absolutely. But also a strange sense of numbness, like my body had decided to shut down my emotions just so I could survive the next few minutes without falling apart completely. I fumbled for my phone and took photographs. The kiss. Her hand on his chest. Them walking into the house together, his arm around her shoulder. Evidence I would need for what was coming next. I drove home in a daze, not entirely sure how I made it without crashing. When I walked into our empty apartment, I looked around at all the things we had built together. The photos on the walls, the furniture we had picked out at that antique store in Fredericksburg, the stack of bridal magazines she had started collecting on the coffee table. All of it was a lie. Every memory, every moment, every promise she had made to me was built on a foundation of deception. I wanted to destroy everything. I wanted to scream and throw things and burn our life to the ground. But instead, I sat down on the couch, pulled out my phone, and started researching. If Vanessa thought she could betray me and walk away unscathed, she had seriously underestimated who she was dealing with. The first thing I did was find out who Derek was. It didn't take long. A quick social media search revealed Derek Shaw, a real estate agent at the same development firm where Vanessa worked. His Instagram was full of photos of expensive cars, luxury homes, and nights out at exclusive clubs. He was exactly the type of person Vanessa would be attracted to. Image-obsessed, status-driven, the complete opposite of everything I thought she valued. As I dug deeper, I discovered that Derek and Vanessa had been working together on a major project for the past year. Client meetings, property tours, business trips, all of it providing the perfect cover for an affair that had apparently been going on right under my nose. I found photos on his social media from events I didn't know Vanessa had attended, conferences in cities she had told me were for work. In some of them, I could see her in the background, laughing with him, standing too close, looking at him the way she used to look at me. But the most damaging discovery came when I started looking at the financial side of things. One of the skills I had developed in my career was data analysis, and I applied those skills to our shared finances with surgical precision. What I found made my blood run cold. Over the past 8 months, Vanessa had been siphoning money from our joint savings account. Not large amounts, but consistent ones. 100 here, 200 there. It added up to nearly $4,000 that had been transferred to a personal account I didn't know she had. An account that, according to the transaction history I eventually pieced together, had been used to fund hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and weekend getaways that I was never invited to. She had been using our money, money I had worked hard to save for our future, to finance her affair with Derek Shaw. When I showed Marcus what I had found, he sat in stunned silence for a full minute before speaking. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I had been thinking about that question for days. The obvious answer was to confront Vanessa, end the relationship, and move on with my life. That's what a reasonable person would do. But I wasn't feeling particularly reasonable. I was feeling hurt and angry and determined to make sure that Vanessa and Derek faced consequences for what they had done. "I'm going to destroy them," I said. Slowly, methodically. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who they really are." Marcus looked at me with concern in his eyes. "Ryan, I understand wanting revenge, but you gotta be careful. Don't do anything that's gonna come back to bite you." "I won't," I promised. "I'm going to play this smart. By the time I'm done, they're going to wish they had never met." The plan I developed over the following weeks was calculated and precise. I didn't want to just hurt Vanessa. I wanted to expose her. I wanted everyone she knew, everyone she had impressed with her perfect image, to see the truth behind the facade. And I wanted Derek Shaw to learn that actions have consequences, even for men who think their charm and money can protect them from anything. The first phase was gathering more evidence. I needed to document everything, not just for my own peace of mind, but because I suspected I would need it for legal purposes later. I started keeping detailed records of Vanessa's lies, comparing what she told me with where she actually was and what she was actually doing. I saved screenshots of her text messages when she left her phone unattended. I photographed receipts and took note of every suspicious transaction. I also did something that I'm not entirely proud of, but that I felt was necessary. I reached out to Jenna, Vanessa's younger sister. Jenna had always been kind to me, and I sensed that she wasn't entirely comfortable with her sister's lifestyle choices. We met for coffee at a neutral location, and I told her everything I had discovered. Jenna's reaction confirmed my suspicions that she already knew something was wrong. "I tried to talk to her," Jenna admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "A few months ago, I saw her with Derek at a restaurant when she told everyone she was at a work conference. When I confronted her, she got angry and told me to mind my own business. She said it wasn't what it looked like, but I knew she was lying. I've been feeling sick about it ever since, but I didn't know what to do. She's my sister, but what she's doing is wrong." I asked Jenna not to warn Vanessa that I knew. I explained that I had a plan, and that I needed her to keep our conversation confidential until the right moment. Jenna agreed, though I could see the conflict in her eyes. She loved her sister, but she also had a moral compass that Vanessa clearly lacked. Phase 2 involved the workplace. Both Vanessa and Derek were employed by Meridian Development Group, a prestigious real estate firm with a strict code of conduct regarding office relationships. According to the company's employee handbook, which I had obtained through some creative research, romantic relationships between colleagues had to be disclosed to HR, and relationships between supervisors and subordinates were strictly prohibited. Derek, as a senior agent, was technically in a position of authority over Vanessa, who worked on marketing for his properties. Their affair wasn't just morally wrong, it was a direct violation of company policy. I gathered all the evidence I had compiled, including photographs, financial records, and a timeline of their relationship. Then I drafted a detailed, anonymous complaint to the HR department at Meridian Development Group, outlining the undisclosed relationship, the potential conflicts of interest, and the company policy violations. I included enough specifics to make the complaint credible, but not so many that it could be traced back to me. The complaint was submitted on a Monday morning. By Wednesday, I had heard through social media that both Vanessa and Derek were under investigation. Phase 3 was the social exposure. This was the part I had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. I knew that going public with the truth would be painful for everyone involved, including me. But I also knew that Vanessa had spent years cultivating a perfect image, presenting herself as a loving girlfriend, a supportive partner, a woman of integrity. That image was a lie, and I believed the people she had deceived deserved to know the truth. I started with our mutual friends, people who had been there for our anniversaries, who had listened to Vanessa talk about how happy she was, who had genuinely believed in our relationship. One by one, I reached out to them privately and shared the evidence I had gathered. Not to gossip or create drama, but because they deserved to know who Vanessa really was. The reactions varied. Some were shocked and immediately supportive of me. Others were skeptical at first, finding it hard to reconcile the evidence with the Vanessa they thought they knew. But as the truth spread, a consensus emerged. What Vanessa had done was unforgivable, and the people who had considered themselves her friends began to distance themselves from her. The fallout was immediate and dramatic. Within a week of the HR complaint, both Vanessa and Derek had been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. I watched from a distance as Vanessa's carefully constructed world began to crumble. She stopped posting on social media. Her phone calls to mutual friends went unanswered. The wedding magazines on our coffee table sat untouched, a painful reminder of the future that would never be. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. On Valentine's Day, the day I had planned to propose, I made a different kind of grand gesture. I had spent the previous night moving all of my belongings out of the apartment while Vanessa was at a hotel with Derek, a hotel I knew about because I had been tracking her location for weeks. By the time she came home expecting to find her unsuspecting boyfriend ready to celebrate the holiday, the apartment was half empty, and I was waiting for her with a folder full of evidence in my hands. The look on her face when she walked through that door is something I will never forget. Confusion first, then realization, then fear. She knew immediately that the game was over. "Ryan," she started, her voice shaking, "I can explain. It's not what you think. Derek and I were just colleagues. Stop," I said, cutting her off. "Just stop. I know everything. I've known for weeks. I know about Derek. I know about the hotel rooms and the business trips that weren't really business trips. I know about the money you stole from our savings account. I know about every lie you've told me for the past year." She tried to cry. She tried to make herself the victim. She said Derek had pursued her, that she had been confused, that she never meant to hurt me. But I could see through it all now. The manipulation, the crocodile tears, the desperate attempts to avoid consequences. I had spent 3 years believing in a woman who didn't exist. "I'm not here to listen to more lies," I said. "I'm here to tell you that it's over. Everything is over. The relationship, the apartment, the future you pretended to want. And I'm here to tell you that there are going to be consequences for what you did." I told her about the HR complaint. I told her about the conversations I had with our friends. I told her that I had documentation of everything, including the financial theft, and that I was prepared to pursue legal action if she didn't repay every cent she had taken from our shared accounts. Vanessa's face went from desperate to angry in a heartbeat. The mask dropped completely, and for the first time, I saw the real woman behind it. "You think you can ruin my life?" she hissed. "You're nobody, Ryan. You're a boring software developer who sits at a computer all day. Derek is twice the man you'll ever be. I was going to leave you anyway. You did me a favor." I nodded slowly, feeling strangely calm in the face of her venom. "Maybe I am nobody," I said. "But at least I'm honest. At least I have integrity. At least I don't destroy people who love me for my own selfish pleasure. Enjoy your new life with Derek. I hear the job market is tough for people who get fired for ethics violations." I walked out of that apartment and never looked back. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal consultations, emotional processing, and rebuilding my life from the ground up. I hired an attorney to pursue the financial aspect of Vanessa's betrayal, and we were able to recover the stolen money plus additional damages for emotional distress. Vanessa tried to fight it at first, but when faced with the overwhelming evidence I had compiled, she eventually agreed to a settlement just to make it all go away. Her career, however, didn't recover as easily. The investigation at Meridian Development Group concluded that both Vanessa and Derek had violated multiple company policies, including the prohibition on undisclosed relationships and the misuse of company resources for personal purposes. It turned out that they had been using company credit cards to fund some of their dates, passing the expenses off as client entertainment. Both were terminated. Derek, who apparently didn't handle adversity well, quickly distanced himself from Vanessa once the consequences started piling up. Within a month of their firing, he had moved on to another woman, leaving Vanessa to deal with the fallout alone. She tried to reach out to me once, sending a long text message apologizing for everything and asking if there was any chance we could talk. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The social consequences were equally severe. Vanessa's reputation in our community was destroyed. The friends she had cultivated, the professional network she had built, the carefully curated image she had maintained for years, all of it collapsed under the weight of the truth. People talked, stories spread. The woman who had seemed so perfect was revealed to be anything but. I won't pretend that the aftermath was easy for me. Despite everything she had done, I had loved Vanessa. The loss of that love, and the future I thought we were building together, left a hole in my life that took a long time to fill. There were nights when I couldn't sleep, mornings when I didn't want to get out of bed, moments when the anger gave way to a sadness so profound it felt like drowning. But I also felt something else. Liberation. For the first time in years, I could see clearly. I wasn't blinded by love or trapped in a web of lies. I was free to rebuild my life on a foundation of truth and authenticity. Marcus was there for me through all of it, just as he had been since we were kids. He would show up at my new apartment with containers of food from his restaurant, refusing to leave until I had eaten. He would listen to me vent for hours without judgment or interruption. He would remind me, again and again, that I had done nothing wrong, that I had handled an impossible situation with integrity and strength. Jenna also stayed in touch. Our relationship was complicated by the fact that she was Vanessa's sister, but she had made it clear that she didn't condone what Vanessa had done. She apologized on behalf of her family and expressed hope that I would be able to move forward. I appreciated her kindness, and I told her that I didn't hold her responsible for her sister's choices. About 6 months after the breakup, I ran into Derek Shaw at a coffee shop downtown. He was alone, looking considerably less polished than the man I had seen kissing my girlfriend in his driveway. He noticed me first and actually had the audacity to approach me. "Ryan, right?" he said, as if we were old acquaintances. "Look, I just want to say, there's no hard feelings, okay? What happened between Vanessa and me, it wasn't personal. These things just happen sometimes. No reason we can't be civil about it." I stared at him for a long moment, marveling at the sheer arrogance of the man. "You helped destroy my relationship," I said calmly. "You knew she was with me, and you pursued her anyway. You helped her lie to me for months, and you think there's no reason we can't be civil?" Derek shrugged, that practiced smile still on his face. "Come on, man, it takes two to tango. If she was happy with you, she wouldn't have been looking elsewhere. Maybe you should take this as a learning experience." Something shifted in me at that moment. The anger that had been simmering for months suddenly crystallized into something cold and sharp. "Here's what I learned," I said, stepping closer so he could hear every word. "I learned that people like you think you can take whatever you want without consequences. I learned that charm and money can protect you from a lot of things, but not from karma. And I learned that the truth always comes out eventually." I paused, letting the words sink in. "Meridian wasn't your only job opportunity, was it? Last I heard, you've been blackballed from most of the major firms in the city. Word gets around in this industry. People don't like doing business with someone who can't be trusted. How's that learning experience working out for you?" The smile finally dropped from Derek's face. For the first time, I saw something behind the arrogant facade. Uncertainty, fear, the dawning realization that his actions had actual, lasting consequences. I didn't wait for a response. I picked up my coffee, walked past him, and left him standing there in the middle of the shop. It was petty, perhaps, but it felt like closure. As for Vanessa, I heard through mutual connections that she eventually moved back in with her mother in Houston, Unable to maintain her lifestyle in Austin after losing her job and her reputation, she tried to reinvent herself on social media, posting about self-improvement and personal growth. But the comment sections were filled with people who knew the truth. The internet has a long memory, and the story of her betrayal had spread further than she ever imagined. I don't take pleasure in her suffering. Despite everything, I'm not a cruel person, but I do believe in accountability. I believe that when you hurt people, when you lie and manipulate and steal, there should be consequences. Vanessa made choices, and those choices led her to where she is now. That's not my doing. That's karma. It's been over a year since that Valentine's Day when everything fell apart. I'm in a different place now, both literally and emotionally. I moved to a new apartment, started working on new projects, began building a life that isn't defined by betrayal. I've started dating again, cautiously, with the understanding that trust needs to be earned over time. I'm more careful now, more aware of the signs I missed before. But I haven't given up on love. I refuse to let Vanessa's actions turn me into someone bitter and closed off. Marcus tells me I handled everything with more grace than he would have. I'm not sure about that, but I do know that I handled it with integrity. I didn't resort to lies or manipulation. I didn't try to destroy Vanessa's life out of pure spite. I simply exposed the truth and let the consequences unfold naturally. Everything that happened to her happened because of her own choices, not because of anything I fabricated or exaggerated. Sometimes I still think about the ring that never got to fulfill its purpose. It's sitting in a safe deposit box now, a reminder of the future that never was. Maybe one day I'll use it for someone else, someone who deserves the kind of love and commitment it represents. Or maybe I'll sell it and put the money towards something new. Either way, it's no longer a symbol of pain. It's a symbol of survival. If you're listening to this and you're going through something similar, I want you to know that it gets better. The pain doesn't disappear overnight, but it does fade. The anger doesn't last forever, but it does fuel your recovery. And the truth, no matter how much someone tries to hide it, always finds a way to the surface. My girlfriend cheated on me right before Valentine's Day, and it felt like the end of the world. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I was no longer blind to the red flags, no longer willing to accept lies wrapped in pretty packaging, no longer afraid to demand the honesty and respect I deserve. Vanessa thought she could have everything. The devoted boyfriend at home, the exciting affair on the side, the perfect reputation, and the stolen money. She thought she was smarter than everyone around her, including me. She was wrong. And now, every time she looks at the ruins of the life she once had, she knows exactly who is responsible. Not me. Her. All of it was her. And that's the only revenge that really matters in the end. Not destruction, but truth. Not hatred, but accountability. Not losing myself to bitterness, but finding a version of myself that's stronger, wiser, and absolutely unwilling to settle for anything less than genuine love. My name is Ryan Mitchell. I was betrayed by someone I trusted completely, and I survived. That's my story. That's my truth, and that's the ending I chose for myself.